cub sighting, you have no idea. And James is right, they grow up so quickly, and I'm so aware of the fact that I'm missing its early stages of cubhood. But we do have something really beautiful to show you in the form of a dark chanting goshawk who has been so patient in posing for us and given us such a nice close view. And of course illuminated by the sun. So often when we show you these birds of prey, they're either backlit or the skies are grey, and we don't quite get to show you the true spectacular nature of their colouring and the way that they look. I mean, from that bright red bill and the slaty grey of the feathers. And in this sort of light, you can even see the rictal bristles around the face, around the bill. And that, of course, all important. And you'll see it particularly in birds that catch insects. They're basically the equivalent of a bird's whiskers. So you will have seen the whiskers on Thandi and her cub. It's essentially a very similar thing to help to guide the bird's bill and what's around it and help them to feel their way. Of course, not as important for this particular bird. It'll focus on small mammals, possibly snakes at times, small snakes, amphibians, anything along those lines. Now, Winning Mike, you were commenting on the width of its primary feathers. So obviously it's flight feathers, the layer that covers the sort of the downy fluff below. And you're absolutely right, they are very, very wide. And that will be as a part of a function of the way in which it flies and the ways in which it hunts, allowing it to hover. That will be one of the functions. Not hover completely, but to be able to sort of glide and at times stay still in order to be able to dive down and grab its prey. It is... Everything that we see out here is so beautifully designed for the purpose that it fulfills, or the niche that it fits into out here. And it probably will give it a degree of agility as well. I'm trying to work that out, how it would work exactly. Because you're right, they are thick feathers. You can see, of course, already, given that we're in the Mara, the breeze has already picked up, lifting up the feathers, and all birds will regularly replace the feathers that sit sort of on the top layer, and the bottom layer as well, but sort of on the top layer, because they get damaged by wind, they get damaged in flight. They replace them, they'll pull out the tatty ones. They spend a great deal of time maintaining their feathers because, of course, they're essential to the way in which the bird survives. So preening, covering them in the coating that is produced by the preen gland, grooming, occasionally bathing, dust bathing, all of those full functions of keeping the bird able to fly. You are so, so considerate, goshawk, posing for us. Called a chanting goshawk because of the sound that it makes. It sounds like chanting. I have forgotten to bring my bird app along. Most unfortunate, because otherwise I would play you the call. You'd be able to hear exactly why it sounds like, or why it's been given the name, a chanting goshawk. Look at you. A really nice bird for those of you who are new to these safaris and building up your bird list. Now, of course, we always encourage viewers whenever they see birds to add it to their bird list, and I think most of our regular viewers will have this one on their list. There we go. Shamsun read my mind. It is 147 on Shamsun's bird list, and that's wonderful to hear. So some of our viewers have really racked up the numbers, like Shamsun gone over 100, occasionally over 200. And what I really enjoy doing, often when we see the bird, we go, oh, add that to your bird list, and it flies away, and you don't really have a chance to look at it again. But by looking at it through the eyes of the camera, you can notice every detail about it, and that in turn is a great way to start out if you're a budding birder, learning to recognize the various aspects of it. Oh, and it's gone. And the reason it's gone is because the drongo was just about to dive bomb it. Unfortunately, vanished right behind us. Right. Well, as James said, it was going to be a brief hiatus. Off you go back across so you can enjoy all of those special moments with the cub before it grows up.
Yes, special moment before she grows up indeed. We're having so many of those little moments right now. It got a little bit sunny down there. Now this is exactly when Thandi can become a little bit cantankerous. She walks closer to you and then looks up and says, "Why are you so close to me? Go away." Keep thinking about trying to get Ronald close to the tree where the kill was, but because she's not coming up towards it, I don't think there's any point really. But imagine Ronald parked right next to them there, with them just completely ignoring him and playing with him. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Not playing with him, playing with each other. Just in case you are a new viewer, Ronald is a rover. He's a little robot that we use to get us sort of tortoise eye views, if you like, of the wilderness. And he's been becoming quite friendly with lions and hyenas late. Now, Scarlett, you're wondering how far away Thandi is from the Nkuhumas Pride, where Noel has been most of the morning. They are, as the crow flies, not very far, about, I'm going to say, 1 kilometre or so less than a mile, about 3/4 of a mile, to be completely accurate, 5/8 of a mile. Yeah, we're just not quite in the right position now as the sun pops out. I will try and get us into a slightly better position, I think, but let's just wait and see if she doesn't move. Cheetah, yes, I do, absolutely. You say, do I think she likes playing with a cub? Yeah. You know, animals are, unlike us, don't feel compelled to do certain things. They don't, as far as we know, become overcome with guilt when they are not doing their duty, and so they do what they feel like doing. And when she feels angry, she expresses anger. When she feels a sense of enjoyment in playing, then she'll play with the cub like she's playing now. So yes, I mean, as far as enjoyment goes, whether she makes a decision that she really enjoys doing it or not, I'm not sure. But I'm sure there is an element of pleasure she gets from doing it, because otherwise she wouldn't do it. In the same way that she wouldn't eat if she didn't get hungry. Unlike a human being, which eats for the sake of eating. Not so, David. I certainly do. That is very sweet. I think we will have to move, though, eventually. Ellie, fantastic. You say David Attenborough would be jealous of the sighting. I think you'll find that David Attenborough has seen some things in his time, over his 90-odd years, that while this certainly must compare with some of the best of them, I reckon he's probably seen enough in those 90 years for him to be, well, not too jealous of what we're having here. But what a life he has led, hasn't he? And what a contribution he's made, more importantly. This is very precious. Very precious time we have. Now she's getting, I suspect, a little bit tired of playing. See, she's moved away. Her tail constantly just flicking a little bit in irritation. Now, First Lady, this is a question that we get asked a lot. What would happen if Tumba, this little cub's brother, were to come across them, and were he to see his mother with another little baby? Well, we don't really know. But very often, when this sort of thing does happen, you find that if the the male leopard that they come across is related and young, he will not react in a negative way at all. So his mother will chase him away, unless there's food. And I mean, Tumba's bigger than his mum now, so he might chase her off some food. But he would almost certainly not try and push home an attack on the youngster. And he'd show interest, but there wouldn't be affection. You'd be highly unlikely to see any form of affection between a male leopard and a youngster. And I keep quoting this, but if she came across Shadow, for example, who's her sister and littermate, you'd be highly unlikely to see Shadow showing any affection for the youngster. But I keep quoting this example from Londolozi down the way, where a leopardess adopted her granddaughter and raised her. So that was an example of a grandmother showing affection for a youngster and adopting it. Whether she would have done that for an unrelated leopard, I don't know. Right, the Leons are 5/8 of a mile from where we are now, in a northerly direction. Things are calming down here, so let's head across to Noel and find out if the lions are going to eat something.
James, things have also calmed down here. She was eating a little bit, this lioness that we have on screen, up close and personal, but she's now just taking a bit of a beat. The little cub is sleeping, and the cub's mum is also resting as well. Everyone, I think, is extremely full, and when the clouds are not covering the sun, it is very, very warm. The hyenas have decided to sleep as well. They're not moving around, and the vultures have all gone back to their little perches on their trees for the most part. So also a bit of a quiet sighting, although we don't get to see lions every day here on Djuma, so it's still a fabulous sighting nonetheless. Zach, good question. You're wondering why the lions haven't eaten the legs of the zebras yet? There's not a lot of meat on there. It's a tiny bit of meat with lots of skin and bone on it, so they've really concentrated on the parts where they can get the most protein as possible. When they leave what's left of this kill later today or this evening, the hyenas will definitely get in there and enjoy that and eat that, and I'm sure the vultures are going to try and get in at the same time and see how much they can pick off of there. But it's not really worth their time and effort. I have seen younger cubs, older than the one that we have here, sort of gnawing on a leg. But it's more a delicacy for our hyena friends as opposed to the lions. Now, something like a giraffe, especially the thigh of a giraffe, there's quite some meat on there. But even that being said, I haven't seen lions eating off of a giraffe leg that much either. They like around the ribs. You can see just to the left of that lioness the rib cage there. And they like the eyeballs and the entrails and the fatty bits around the rump. Those are their favorite things to eat. When I used to do research with lions, we used to sit here like this, like we're doing now, but we would do it for days and days and days and days. And they were usually much lazier than this, especially when it was more hot. So while we're busy waiting to see if they're going to have any action and any movement out of these lionesses in the next little bit, let's head back up to Jamie, who has one of my favorite birds, the crowned crane.
Oh, you horrible, horrible crane, you. I was just about to say to you that we've been enjoying a little bit of a theme this morning. Oh, look at this, look at this, look at the dance. Look at the courtship. Oh, that was beautiful. just a little affirmation of the bond between the male and the female crowned crane. And where I was going with the idea of the theme was the crowned crane that flew across was actually in the process of nest building. So where it was initially is the spot that they have chosen for their nest site. Whether we wanted to or not, and it's one of those strange things that often happens on these drives. Somehow they develop a theme all of their own. And we never plan for it, it's just something that works out that way. So I think we can safely expect some little crowned crane chicks in the future, provided that their nest isn't discovered by a predator. You've already seen, you had that amazing sighting with Taylor, where the crowned cranes were fighting off the python, or attacking the python, and they were kicking it and it was striking towards them. A once-in-a-lifetime sighting. And that's something, if we observe this nest, we might actually get a really good idea of just how the crowned cranes go about defending their nests, if there's predators that they can defend the nest from. There we go, big stretch of the feathers. Are you going to give us a shake? No, just lifting up the feathers a little bit. Another example of a bird, I don't even need to tell you to look at its different features. This is a bird that is completely unmistakable. Now, Alvin, you say that you love the head feathers. Funnily enough, that's exactly what we were talking about just before you returned to us from South Africa. The desire to reach out and stroke that crest is all-consuming. Oh, look at this. Oh, no. Oh, sorry, buddy. Almost. Okay, do a dance instead. Almost slightly overshot the mark there. You going to try again? Yes, ruffle your feathers. Everybody's got a little bit awkward now. It's okay. There'll be plenty of other opportunities. He went in there a little bit enthusiastic and slightly overbalanced. I'm not sure whether that was the female tipping him off the front or if he just came in with slightly too much speed. And I think if we sat and we watched them for the rest of the day, we'd probably see them mate a few times. I'm not sure exactly of the number of times that a mating pair of crowned cranes will mate. I doubt it's quite as regularly as something like a leopard or a lion, but it would be interesting to witness. Now, these are aspects of these animals' behavior that very few people get to sit and observe. You've seen their dance, you've seen the affirmation of the bond between them, and that will continue on constantly when the female lays her eggs. And I'm going to predict the next question. The next question is going to be, is it the female that is responsible for incubating the eggs? And I don't know the answer to that question. I suspect that both the male and the female will be responsible for sitting on the eggs and incubating them, but I'm not 100% certain. Now, Carol, you say that you are loving the since they both seem to be occupied with feeding. And let's just have a look at the goose that is up ahead of us, an absolutely massive specimen. And there we go, for Carol and all of you birders out there, a nice spur-winged goose to add to your collection. An enormous goose. I would say easily a third bigger than an Egyptian goose, possibly even more so. I think most of us have residual childhood trauma from being chased by geese. I know I certainly do. I've been chased by geese before when I was a kid, feeding them at Zoo Lake in Johannesburg. And I think you'll probably find a fair amount of my friends and colleagues will share a similar experience or have had similar experiences. Lots of people like to have guard geese, and they're quite intimidating when they come running at you, hissing away. It's a scary thing when you're a small child. I'm pretty sure when I was a child, given that I'm not an enormous human being, I was probably roughly the size of that goose. And I'm pretty sure I would have lost in a fight to it. Being chased by a swan is even more terrifying. When I lived in the UK, there was a swan that was on the River Cam that was called, his name was ASBO, Antisocial Behavioral Order. Something, of course, generally delivered to rowdy teens who have a tendency to vandalize places. This particular swan was quite famous for attacking rowers. Not his fault, defending his nest. as Bo the goose. I mean the swan. Even more intimidating because it's even bigger. Every single bird here seems to be imitating flamingos. Willie, you would like to share the tale of being bitten by a goose on your bottom. I'm very sorry to hear that. That sounds most traumatizing. I have a similar story, although it did not involve... It involved the sister of a friend of mine, and myself, actually. We both got bitten on the bottom by a pelican at a bird show. There was much screaming involved in that whole process, although I can tell you that bites from a pelican are actually not that painful, or perhaps I just got off lightly. I don't know. I can say I wouldn't want to get bitten by this goose, and certainly not on the bottom. I'm sorry to hear that, Willie. That must have been deeply traumatizing for you. I do hope you haven't found yourself with a terrible fear of birds after that incident. I would love to know more details of that story, but sometimes things are best left to the imagination. I think we can all safely imagine the scenario. Probably highly, highly entertaining versions of that tale. One leg up. And most birds will do that. Of course, flamingos are famous for standing on one leg. And it's one of those jokes that guides love to tell, particularly when you can't see the second foot. And guide trainers, there's the famous one-legged goose. Look it up in your bird book. Oh, Melanie, I wish on the subject of birds. You want to know if we have shoebulls in the Mara. There are some recorded cases of shoebull sightings from the early 90s. One very lost shoebull, I think, that wandered around for a while and then disappeared. So they tend to live in very swampy areas. We actually were fortunate enough to see one. We saw two, actually, in Uganda. We went on a very specific shoebull tour to go and see one because it is what we term a lifer. One of those birds that every keen birder wants to add to their bird list and often only gets the opportunity once in their lifetime to see. I saw the shoebull. I loved it. I have an obsession with shoebulls. I just find them the most fascinating birds. And for those of you who don't know what a shoebull looks like, it looks like it's got a shoe on the end of its face, or a clog. It's a massive, massive bull and a big bird, often up to about 1.5 meters in height. Big stalk. With closely related to the stork family, that catches catfish in the swampy areas. They spend a large amount of time just standing. Really beautiful birds, quite awe-inspiring, massive wingspans. We saw one. It took a huge amount of finding and a lot of traveling along in a small boat, I suppose. If I had to term it something, I guess we'd call it a boat. And the worst part is that I did not have my camera, neither did Brent. My lens went walkabout with his camera, so neither of us had a way of taking a photograph. So I tried taking a very, very blurry photograph through my binoculars. I've never been the master of taking a photograph with my phone through my binoculars. James, of course, has pioneered the technique. Let's go and find out whether he's taken any pictures of Thandi and her cub.
Very few pioneers become masters, and I definitely fit that bill. Now, we're going to spend another few minutes with Thandi. I feel like she's saying to me, I've been very patient with you guys. You've spent 2 hours with me now, and I'd now like you to clear off, please. Just every so often she's lifting her top lip to reveal her fairly substantial canines. And so we're going to do one more little segment here, and then we're going to head off towards the lions with Ronald and the hyenas. We're going to see if we can get some pictures with Ronald of the hyenas and of the lions. Lovely sounds you can just hear in the background there of the emerald spotted wood dove going. Everything's just getting calm and quiet now. That little cub is just too sweet. Which of course is almost, it's almost a silly thing to say, because I've never seen a cub that isn't sweet, in the same way that I've never seen anyone describe a female leopard as anything other than beautiful. Other than myself, of course, but I won't make that mistake again. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, when I arrived here at Wild Earth, I hadn't met Kruger before, who's Thandi's mother, and she was the great favourite amongst our regular viewers. And when I met her, I described her as being slightly pug-faced. Well, you cannot believe the storm of discontent I unleashed on social media when I suggested that Kruger was not the best-looking leopard I'd ever seen in my life. Anyway, I won't ever make that mistake again, I can assure you. And so we continue describing female leopards as beautiful and males as big. Sid, all cats are in some way threatened. You say, are leopards in danger or endangered? Well, not as such, no. But it's very difficult to get accurate numbers of how many there are. In fact, it's almost impossible to get accurate numbers of how many there are. And that's because they live such secretive lives. They do live outside of protected areas. So, for example, if you go, they found one walking through Nelspruit, which is a fairly large town. Well, you might even call it a city. I don't know if it has a cathedral. But in the Lowveld, there was one found walking through a gas station the other day. And they still find them every so often on the outskirts of Pretoria, which is the capital of South Africa. You'll find them in the mountains around Cape Town if you look carefully enough. And so they're around, but it's very difficult to quantify how many of them are around, and so we're not sure if they're endangered. The big danger would be to say, they're fine, they can live anywhere, they'll be all right. And that would be a mistake, because we don't know. Now, I am talking, of course, exclusively about the African leopard. Various other leopard subspecies, because they're all the same species, Panthera pardus, are endangered, and the most endangered, of course, is the Amur leopard of eastern Russia, near the town of Vladivostok. I just have to say that every so often, Vladivostok, it makes me feel happy. And the Amur leopard there, they reckon there are only 50 or so left in the leopard reserve that they have there. And there are, again, an unknown number in the forests around Vladivostok and north of that wonderful town. Have you been to Vladivostok, David?
No.
It is interesting. I wouldn't describe it as Paris, or something like that, but it is worth visiting. On the seaside. It is like the San Francisco of Russia. Without the bridge. They've got a bridge, though. It's not quite the same. Alright, we're going to leave this area now. We're going to leave little Thandi and little Cubby, whose name is not Rebel Wilson, and go across to Stephen before you can react to what I've just said. Goodbye.
Thank you, James. I believe you've all been having an absolutely wonderful time over there with Thandi and her cub playing. We found some male leopard tracks, and we've spent the last however long it's been since you've been with us trying to track him. And we haven't been very successful, but it was wonderful anyway to be on foot and finding all the little signs and everything that leaves behind. But unfortunately, no luck. But on that note, we come back to the wonders of the marula tree, because that is the tree that I'm focusing on this morning, and I'll be doing some more this afternoon. We spoke briefly about that fruit. I've got another one in my pocket. Remember this fruit here? Just going to change because the light. This is the fruit here, and then this is the seed, or the kernel that you get inside, and this is what the squirrels absolutely love. Inside there is where you find the seeds, and these have already been harvested by your squirrels, And Seb was saying he used to make jewelry out of these, and some people do. They're very, very nice things, and you often find these in elephant dung. The locals outside in the community, they harvest this. They use a rock to break it, to get that kernel out. Lots of beautiful oil inside. Like I said, you can eat it just like a peanut, and apparently it helps with a bit of libido in elder people. So quite nice to look after that. But we were talking briefly about leaves, and before I get into leaves here, let me just show you the marula tree itself. Oopsie, I am on the wrong page, because I remember I was going to do another tree, but I was forced to do the marula because of us finding such a beautiful little baby. MA would help, wouldn't it? 122 in my magical book. And when I talk about the leaves, you can see there when I talk about compound leaf, you see how the leaflets are arranged oppositely, and then there's a terminal leaf. Very important to understand that when identifying leaves. And here is a picture of the leaves there. We are standing under a magnificent marula tree right now, and I will talk about the leaves now, just so that everybody has an understanding of what I mean when I talk about compound versus simple. And just briefly, the picture of unripe fruit and the yellow fruit that we are ideally looking for. So let me just put down this magical book. Do not confuse the marula leaf with that of, yes, you guessed it, the false marula. Okay, so now the false marula leaf looks very similar to the marula, hence why people call it false marula. And what you will notice is that the leaves are actually green, whereas the marula leaf has got like a whitish sort of antacid sort of look to it. Another thing to pay attention to is the fact that in between the leaf and the stalk, there's no extra stalk there. Whereas in a marula, I wonder if you can pan up to one of those for me, Seb, and see if you can see one of the marula leaves. But have a look at how each of those leaflets have got a small little stalk known as a petiolule. Very important to understand that. And if you can't see it clearly, let's come back to the book, and you'll see the picture here has got the beautiful. Can you see those petiolules, eh? Not sure if you can see them clearly, but if not, if we have a look in the book here, you'll see that the leaflets have got a little stalk on them, which is a very easy characteristic to identify the marula versus the false marula. No leaf stalks on there. Easy enough? Fantastic. So this is a compound leaf. And I grabbed just another one, just so that you can understand what I mean by compound. Here's another compound leaf that is shriveled a little bit, is our bloodwood. And then simple leaves, just to make you understand what a simple leaf looks like. There he is. Okay, so if everybody understands from now on, if I do talk about compound versus simple, it's very important for identification of trees. And when it comes to identification of trees, elephants don't need the leaves to identify. They can actually smell them, and I believe Noel is with one right now.
We are with Ellie's. We've got an elephant bum on screen for you. We've left our lions. They were very sleepy and not doing much, and we are on our way to Chitwa Dam. So just here on the side of Gowrie, Maine, we found this beautiful herd of elephants, and there's quite a few young bulls. They've been coming up and investigating us and playing with each other. And then just to the left, they basically come and surrounded all of us and then moved on. And then just to the left of our vehicle, we have a beautiful female and her youngster. Quite a nice little family picture there. Now again, some of them are eating a bit of leaves, as Steve was talking about. There she goes there. But they're still eating quite a bit of the grass that's around. Something I've noticed just in the past couple of days, because we really, really need rain, is everything's starting to go brown now. And so I'm desperately hoping that we do not have a drought like we did the other year. But if we don't get a good downpouring of a couple hundred mils within the next month or so, I think we're really going to run into trouble. Also, the later in the season we go for rain, the harder it is going to be for everything to really prosper properly. And when you get rain in the winter here, because it's cool enough, things can't actually grow properly. So we do need these summer rains. It's really, really important. Can we hear them moving? when the grass gets drier like this, it's easier to hear them meandering through. Now, I've already seen at least 6 young bulls, probably around the ages of about 12 to about 15 or 16. So it's an interesting makeup of this herd. So it could be that some of them were kicked away already from other herds, but I think most of them are just, it could just be that most of these females had babies around the same time several years ago. And then shortly, they're all going to be pushed out and then have to carry on as adults. Now, if they're all pushed out together, it wouldn't surprise me if some of them stick with each other for the time being until they get a little bit older and then really want to be on their own. Not that they're going to form a little bachelor herd like Impala, but I have seen it happen from time to time. Now, a lot of where they're finding grass, especially this one here, is along the sides of some of these miter drains that we build to help carry the water away from the roads to help with anti-erosion. And those areas will create little, yes sir, will create little covets that allow for water retention. Then you're going to find a bit more palatable grass on the side there. You're also going to find a lot of grasses that grow on disturbed areas, and that road would be, the side of the road would be a disturbed area, and not all of them, but a good portion of them will be quite tasty and then need the grazing from these elephants now to help propagate more grass, which one will help more grazers along the way. Steve's talking about trees today, so I think I'll put in a little bit about grass. Mr. Q-Tip, good question. You'd like to know, is there an overpopulation of elephants in the Kruger National Park? So, Mr. Q-Tip, we're not physically in the Kruger National Park. We're in the Sabi Sands, which forms part of the greater Kruger area. So, if you take the Kruger National Park is part of that, and then if you take the Kruger National Park within the greater Kruger area, the majority of people in this area will say, yes, we do have an overpopulation. I do have a couple of friends and know a couple of people who think that our populations are fine, bordering on normal, but the majority consensus is yes, that we have an overpopulation. But our overpopulation is nowhere near as bad as, say, the Chobe area in Botswana or the northeastern part of Botswana. So we have a lot of studies that are going on with the elephant populations and with their knock-on effect with something like the vultures that we saw today, because a lot of the trees that the elephants like to eat, like that marula tree that Steve was showing you earlier, and is important for some bird species, as well as the knobthorn tree is important for nesting sites for things like the vultures. And so when you have that overpopulation, it does affect the tree population, and then it affects the fact that there's not a lot of places for those vultures to nest, which then means that their populations decline. It also means that in certain areas in the greater Kruger area, there's a lot more, I'm trying to find a way to put this, hands-on approach with ecological management of the elephants. There's some private areas here who do contraceptives with the elephants so that they can't overpopulate. There's also a lot of work that's being done on keeping an eye on the different types of vegetation to see if it's then affecting the grazers and the browsers. And the information I have is that it is affecting. With something like the drought, if let's say this drought does happen this year, that will also affect their population. So that will be 2 droughts in about 3 years, which means that the population of elephants will decline slightly. But we would need a longer drought for it to really, really decline, to then take the population numbers down to a point where they're healthy again. So, long story short, yes, they're over their carrying capacity. The majority consensus is they're over their carrying capacity in this area. Alright, so since all we're getting is bums, I think we're going to move our vehicle in a different direction. And I think that these elephants will eventually make it down to Chitwa Dam. But I would like to make it down there with all of you to see what's happening. Lisa, good question. You want to know, is it true that if elephants flap their ears to cool their brain? It's true, Lisa. They do it not just to cool their brain, but to cool their whole body. About 82% of an elephant's body heat is lost through the vein system at the back of the ear. So yes, indeed, very true. And then when they're cold, they tend to put their ears more flat against their head to help keep the heat in. Weather's being very strange today. It's cold and then hot and then cold and then hot. Colbert, you're wondering if the elephants take down the telephone lines that are here. Colbert, I haven't seen them do it myself, but it wouldn't surprise me if they, especially the bulls, did try every now and then, maybe just by rubbing on them. There you can see that telephone pole in the background there. Sorry about that. But we do have lodges that are here, and lodges do need telephones. Sometimes it's cell phones, but there's still some landlines around, and we also need electricity. Some places have all their electricity underneath the ground, with the wires buried under there, and some still have poles like you're seeing here. All right, Ellies, you've been spectacular, but I really think let's head on to Chitwa Dam. Vildy and I are hoping that maybe little Hassana is around. We can also have a look for our hippos. Maybe there's some more elephants that are down there. Maybe some good bird species. Jamie's getting some amazing birds with great nesting behavior today. And then I believe Mr. Hendry has gone back to where we were, over to the lions. He's going to see what Ronald can come up with for a view for all of you.
We are going to do that, everybody. We're driving Ronald now towards where the lions are resting underneath the bushes there. And we'll just see what happens. We're going to do it very slowly. Scott managed to get very close yesterday, and they just carried on eating. They might have a slight reaction initially. There you can see Ron's picture. There he goes, fearlessly heading across the road. He is a fearless fellow. And I will just say to you, we've had quite a lot of kudu alarm calling between here and Thandi. I don't think they were alarming at Thandi. I think quite possibly there's a male leopard around somewhere. All right, we should almost have a picture of the lions with Ronald. Not just yet. Kirsten, you don't have that red cross in the middle of your picture, do you? Okay. That's good. My picture's got a sort of target in it almost. That was me dropping the radio. These cars are designed to make as much noise as possible. Ronald? Hey, my boy? Careful in there, see? Don't take any chances. Colbert, do you want to know how Ronald got his name? Well, Colbert, I am the namer-in-chief out here. For example, I get to name all the leopards and all the lions. And so I named Ronald. No, I'm talking rubbish. You know, it came about entirely by chance. We were in the middle of a TV show, and I just said one day, you know, for the purposes of alliteration almost, there is Ronald the Rover, and it stuck. It really is astounding how they have habituated to him in less than a day. Scott did this yesterday, I think it was for the first time they'd seen him. Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? Totally unfazed they are. Now, he's, as you could see, he's probably about 2.5 meters from them. I won't push the envelope too much, because it's one thing them taking a paw from Hosanna, the male leopard, with a gentle slap, but a lion will knock his block off, even with the gentlest of slaps. That is fantastic. They're having a lovely morning, these lions. They've got nice food to eat. It's a sort of cool day so far. They've got good shade. A couple of vultures around and some hyenas, but they're not going to come near a lioness group like this. Now, I'm just going to turn him slightly. Starlight, you know what? Scott Dyson is obviously the greatest bush fashion icon there's ever been, and that extends to his use of Ronald. It was he who originally disguised Ronald in, well, it wasn't actually, it was Graham Wallington, but yesterday Scott had disguised Ronald very nicely with some leaves, in keeping with his general sort of adherence to bush fashion, and I didn't bother today, which was possibly a little silly of me. Right, so now we're getting towards the kill, and you can see a little bit of, well, unfortunately, striped skin there. Ron is now basically on the kill. That's a bit macabre, isn't it? Well, the cub is in here somewhere. I was rather hoping we'd get a view of the cub from here. There it is, the cub's just behind. You turn him round slightly. There's a lioness. That's not the cub. I think the cub's just the other side there. Thank you, Kirsten. You say a nice framing. I think you're being sarcastic. That's probably a bit better. Isn't that sweet? That is very cool. Oh, there's the cub. There's the little baby. Now, does anybody know what happened to the other cub? I haven't seen these lions for so long that I don't know where the other cub is. In fact, I don't know if I ever met the other cub. I don't think I did. We'll just drive him round there and see if the little cub wants to say hello. Oh, Ronald's got his own disguise there, you see that? Well, the cub's not very pleased with him. But the adults could not give two continentals. Alright, let's wait there and see what happens. There's a little one. Come on then. So sweet. This lion's just come out of that beautiful teddy bear phase and just getting a little bit lanky. You can see that. And pretty good neck, pretty good condition. Beautiful picture there of the little thing watching Ronald. And these lions are chilled, aren't they? You know, the first time Graham Wallington, our fearless commander-in-chief, did this experiment, the lions didn't react very well, and we were worried that Ronald would be a bad idea from then. And we didn't actually try it with lions, because he tried it with lions straight off. But we've just got a little bit more bold, and we've just kind of said, okay, well, if there are one or two bad reactions, maybe that's okay if they, you know, we're not threatening them off a kill or chasing them away or increasing the threat levels to their actual survival. And I think that we haven't done that. And I think yesterday, certainly Scott habituated these chaps, and the leopards have paid no attention. Chitwa, you're wondering if they've learnt that this is something not really alive and that will not steal their food. Yes, absolutely. If they had any vague inkling that Ronald would steal their grub, they'd slap him. But he doesn't smell like food, you see. He doesn't smell like a tortoise, for example. And many of you have been very kind in sending me, Ronald is actually very unsophisticated in comparison with some of the robots that people have tried to observe wildlife with. From a looks point of view, not from a technical point of view, but from a looks point of view, they have put, you know, they've made baby wild dogs and stuck them in a den site with cameras on them, and they've done all sorts of things like that. And got with varying degrees of success. I don't know how many of them have been as mobile as Ronald, and I don't know if any of them have managed to, you know, deliver a higher definition signal to the world at the same time. Well, there is another vehicle in the sighting, so I just need to be very, very careful here. What I don't want to do is give the lion's a fright with Ronald while there's someone else here. All right, Noelle has managed to find herself at the water's edge. Let's see what she can find on the water's edge.
Well, James, the water's edge is actually fairly quiet. The only thing that's really happening here at Chitwa Dam is a little bit of play with our pod or our raft of hippos just in front of us here. But this strange weather, this hot, cold weather we're having today, everything seems to be out and about doing various different things that we just haven't been able to find them do. So because the weather is moving from hot to cold, we're getting a little bit more action with these hippos, which is nice. We've got a couple of youngsters that are here in front that are moving around, and then a couple of the adults are just busy resting on the side and communicating underneath the water here. We've had a bit of gaping, bit of yawning, bit of rolling around, bit of head shaking. General hippo behavior. The bird sounds are good though. We've got red-billed buffalo weavers that are calling and building their nests over to our right-hand side. Up in this big, beautiful dead leadwood. Bit of a slight breeze coming through. There they are. They'll go off and find those sticks, and it was very, very messy nest. They're not as, what's my word? I want to say concrete builders, but that's not the right one. They're not as intricate builders, I should say, as some of our other weaver species. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that they don't just use these nests for breeding, they also live inside these nests, and they live inside these nests all year round. Now, something that's interesting, I know a few of you were asking if we could please look for snakes today. You'll sometimes find snakes up in those nests looking for the chicks. And then we have our egret. Our great egret is out and about and hunting again. And he's moved over to a fabulous little spot here. He seems to have found something. This is the one that we filmed the other day with Dobby that was doing that funny little dance with his back end, his little twerking. Oh, he got something. Looked like a little minnow, maybe? Curse is saying in my ear, a live kill. It's true. You've just seen a live kill here in South Africa, in the Sabi Sands, on Chitwa Dam with Safari Live. And that's what's so amazing about what we do, is everything that you're watching is live. So don't forget, everyone, send through those questions, Safari Live, hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or on YouTube chat. We love them. Now he's had his little snack. Now he's going to preen himself, and then he'll probably start hunting again. Yes, the light on him is really nice now. Gizmo, good question. You want to know why do the buffalo weavers build such large nests? Now, Gizmo, part of it, I think, has to do with where they like to nest in these dead trees, and part of it has to do with the fact that they're a gregarious bird species, where they want to, gregarious meaning friendly and communal, and they want to live all together. So because they do that, they need larger nests to accommodate everybody that's in there. Then, because this tree is such a good spot for buffalo weaver nesting, that's why you have so many buffalo weavers' nests in there. So something like a sociable weaver will build one huge nest that can weigh over a ton and can sometimes break off the tree that it's in. Or we were talking about the telephone poles earlier. In the west and north of South Africa, you get sociable weavers that build these nests on telephone poles that do actually, the weight of them cracks them. So that's not from an elephant, but from them. So this tree is just prime habitat. So they're building, it's like building condos. They've all decided to have their extended family living in one spot, each and every extended family in their little condo system on top of that leadwood tree. So Jamie has moved on from birds and on to big mammals. We're swapping, Jamie. I did elephants and then birds, and now you're going to do birds and then an elephant. So I think let's head on up to her while Vildi and I carry on looking for Hasana.
Well, it's the first big mammals I've managed to find this morning, so it was partially the fact that I really was enjoying the birds this morning, and also the fact that I haven't been able to find you very much at all. But we have got this lovely view of a massive bull elephant peacefully enjoying some of the grass in the sort of swampy area between Serena and the escarpment. And he is absolutely lovely. You get some true gentlemen of the Mara. I always think of them as gentlemen. Once they reach that sort of 40-plus mark, they are usually so well behaved, so patient, so tolerant, and so accustomed to everything going on around them that nothing seems to surprise them anymore. Now, what I really wanted to do was actually give you a size comparison between this gentleman and the young male that is his companion. And they're sometimes termed askaris out here, the young males that accompany these big mature bulls. There he is over there. He was right next to him, so the size difference was much clearer. But it's a really nice, you can still get an idea as to just how much growing the elephant on the left is going to do in his lifetime. So it is a young male. I did double check myself. It was most likely going to be a young male, but there was a part of me wondering if perhaps I wasn't being fooled and somehow a female had been separated. But it is indeed a young male. He's got some little decoration on his back and impressive tusks for a young elephant of his size. Now, Paulie, you wondering about the tusks and about what age you will start to see the tusks coming through. So the permanent tusks, baby elephants do have milk tusks, like kids. They have milk tusks that often don't even show past the skin of the upper lip, and those will fall out in due course. And around about 2.5, you'll start to see the tusks poking through of a young elephant, and at about 3, you've got an inch or so past that has grown past the skin. And I always wonder to myself if they experience the same. I know that when they're teething initially, I know that they do experience discomfort, but I do wonder about the discomfort of growing tusks. A tusk, of course, for our new viewers, is a tooth, and it is deeply, deeply rooted in the upper jaw. But it would be interesting to know whether or not it causes them any kind of itchiness or discomfort, like a teething child. We know that elephant youngsters will words, I can't remember the word. How do you say specifically like that? That's how you say the word specifically. Target certain types of plants when they are having teething trouble. So you've already seen Steve enjoy the taste of a silver cluster leaf. Any plant like a silver cluster leaf or a spike thorn that has that numbing, tingling feeling, it also dries up all of the saliva, but it does numb the gums as well. And tambuti is apparently quite good for toothache as well. Tambuti, of course, with its milky white latex, would kill us. Our elephants are not up to much other than sort of enjoying their time on the plain. Let's head across to Noel, who's got some elephants enjoying a drink.
Just as we were about to leave, these chaps came down for a drink, and it is very beautiful scenery-wise, and also just nice behavior to witness. Elephants drinking is a very calming experience, for me at least, and I'm hoping, it's a little bit chilly, but I'm hoping that they want to go for a swim. I think we might even be able to hear them sucking up the water and spitting it in their mouths. Notice how delicately they do that. Notice how they're not sticking their trunk all the way down to the bottom to suck up, because if they did that, they would get too much silt. They're doing it just at the tip. Ooh, let's go to James quickly. Ronald's found some hyenas.
He has found a hyena. There are a few of them, actually. In fact, there are a lot of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hyenas here. And Ron can't see any of them at the moment. He can see one. I'm going to bring him forward slightly, and then turn him to face these chaps. Ooh, one of them's coming up to him. No, there we are. That's a nice shot of a hyena. There's one coming into frame now. Isn't that wonderful? Look at that. Oh, this is wonderful. This is just spectacular. Oh, how wonderful. Now, they are obviously not reacting in the same way as the lions are, which is very interesting indeed. But if David swings his camera to the left-hand side, we've got a hyena who's come right up to us. That looks like a male, fairly wizened male. And what's so cool about that is, or what's so interesting to me about that is that they are, you can see how habituated they are to the vehicle. They've got absolutely no concern or thought about the main vehicle, but the rover they're looking at, they're interested in that. And that's probably because they've just never seen him before. And those lions took precisely 20 minutes yesterday to habituate to him. You can see they hardly reacted at all today. And these hyenas would do the same. I'd love to take him to a hyena den. The only problem with taking him to a hyena den is, you know how inquisitive those cubs are. I mean, they could quite possibly chew him to pieces in seconds. And that will bring the wrath of the Russian down on me, and goodness, no one wants that. The Russian, by the way, is the fellow responsible for Ronald, his builder, designer, architect, friend, father. Thank you, Mr. Hyena. You've given us a very nice shot there. Now, one of the reasons we're doing this, I know most of you, or a lot of you, will have seen what we call the disclaimer at the beginning of the show, where the 5 cheetah brothers are walking over that camera. And that was in the Mara, and Scott set that up. We need to make a few of those. And so, to have hyena at low angle like we've just had, well, we might use something like that for our disclaimer as well. So we have a few of them. The disclaimer is the thing where we say, this program contains... Ooh, that's not great. Maritza, you say this is the money shot of the day. Well, it might just get a bit more money right now. Now, here's a youngster. Here's a youngster coming up now. And seems almost aware as to which side of Ronald is the business end, which side's got his eyes. Don't bite. If you see a jaw opening, we're going to have to move him, which will give them a bit of a fright, but that's okay. They're hyenas, they can cope. Everyone is now holding their breath, because one bite from those immensely powerful jaws could end him. David, I can't see those jaws. Can we?
Me neither. I don't think he's biting them yet.
You don't think he's biting them yet? He's sitting very still. You keep your mouth... Sorry. Please don't try and eat Ronald. It really would be much better if you didn't. There we go, that's a nice shot. And don't worry, I mean, look, Ronald... we had full face there, David. If Ronald has to be sacrificed, well, so be it. He's not Completely irreplaceable. I would hate for the last view of him for you to be the teeth. No. Yeah, Scotty G5, you say it's amazing to watch them just stare at it. It is. You know what this thing's going for? Is the rubber on the wheel. Let's hold that shot steady. That might be quite a nice disclaimer. There we go. That's what we want. Now just duck into shot if you don't mind. Yeah, that's it. See, ideally we don't want them to react at all. And so this is part of the habituation process, and while it's quite amusing watching it happen like this, it's not the objective. I just wonder if hyenas are not slightly too inquisitive, slightly too ready to take chances. Colbert, do you want to know what the plural of hyena is? Well, it's hyenas. Oh, you're talking a collective noun. It would be a clan of hyenas. Let's just back him off slightly. It's quite nice. Yeah, James Richard, absolutely. You're saying he's seeing his brief life flash before his eyes. Absolutely he is. Luckily for him, all of his parts are replaceable in one way or another, even if some of them are quite expensive. The expensive bits are really kind of in his bowels, so he should be okay. You know, his camera is a relatively inexpensive camera, although no real cameras are totally inexpensive. Let's back him off slightly, so we get a bit of sky. We might just, let's just keep going backwards and then stop. And then just a little shifty to the side. See, they're already getting used to him. When we originally started and when we moved him, they got a fright. Now they are not getting a fright. And the problem with a completely habituated hyena, of course, as I say, is his tendency to give a bite just to see if there's something nice to eat there. Joy, you say, would Ronald's innards hurt a hyena if they bit him? No, not if they bit him, not at all. If they swallowed him, yes, but they wouldn't. You know, we know that these hyenas come into camp all the time and, test bite lots of things. And they just don't, anything that tastes odd, they won't swallow. And I don't mean tastes odd to you and I mean to them, because, they obviously have very powerful digestive juices. The only thing in there that if they did sort of eat and swallow that might cause damage would be the batteries, but the batteries are underneath a little steel frame, and there's no ways they'd do that. We'd also, if I couldn't deter them from him by moving him with the remote control, I'd just drive up there and move him. All right, as close as these hyenas are to Ronald, I believe Noel is having an equally intimate time with some elephants.
We're having some very, very, very cool shots with Ellie's. I did just try something with a GoPro. I've never used a GoPro before, so I'm hoping that it came out well. We'll have to wait and see. They're talking to each other now. Can we hear that? They had a beautiful little drink. No swimming today. They're going to head off. So we've got part of the herd has come to the right-hand side of our vehicle, and then one female moved over to the left-hand side of the vehicle, just over here. All very relaxed, just curious and interested in us. And that's what she thinks of all of us. Thank you, madam. And then behind her, you're going to see come into frame shortly is a young bull that is making his way down. Also to have a drink, but keeping a wide breath from this small breeding herd that is with us. So that plop, plop, plop you could hear, sometimes when you're on bushwalk like Steve is on now, sometimes when you're not really hearing them feed, you can hear that plop, plop. It is a soft noise, but it's a very definitive, very distinctive noise. That can only mean elephants going to the toilet. Now, I'll be interested to see if she interacts with this young bull that's now coming up to her, or if she chooses to carry on to the breeding herd. Looks as if she's going to interact with him a little bit. He's going to smell and see if she is possibly in estrus. He's a little bit young to be doing any sort of mating. There he sticks his trunk into his mouth to test. And then when she moves off, he might go and investigate where she went to the toilet. So we've got a little bit of our aerial in the background because they're directly behind us. And I don't want to move the car. I don't want to disturb them too much there. They're having a bit of a greeting. Now, this is the type of communication that the two of them are doing where we can't hear. Beautiful. It's possible that they're related in some way. It's also possible that he's just a cheeky young bull. Now, Jamie is still up in Kenya, of course, and she has a tiny little mammal that she would like to show you. So I think let's head on up to her, and we'll stick with our Ellies and see what happens.
I am still in Kenya, of course. It would have been quite a feat if I'd managed to transport myself elsewhere. And we've actually got a group or business of banded mongoose that are being so obliging. First the goshawk, now the obliging mongooses, also known as mongoose, plural, also occasionally known as mongoose. You can actually use all of those as a plural term. So definitely one of the sweetest creatures to watch, and also one of the most fascinating. They're called, the collective noun is a business of mongoose for a reason, because they're always busy. And because it has rained, yellow-throated longclaw decided to photobomb us there. Because it's rained so much over the course of the night, a lot of them are absolutely soaked, covered in sticky mud. So some of them are taking the opportunity now to get rid of some of that mud, grooming it off their coats now that they've made their way out of the swampy area. It's not exactly a swamp, but it is quite swampy at the moment. They're taking... You missed a bit. You missed the end of your tail. Yes, there you go. That's not the end of your tail. Yes, you missed a bit there too. It's difficult to get rid of mud without a mirror, I suppose. You need to find a friend, little mongoose, to help you out here. Of course, allo grooming, all part of, we've spoken a lot about affirming bonds within groupings, whether it's the mating pairs of birds or if it's this collection of mongoose. They have a relatively strict hierarchy, but there are close connections between the members of the group, and they will socially groom or allo groom each other, much in the same way that you'll see primates do as well. And a lot of that has to do with ranking in terms of, and currying favour, as it were. But at the moment it seems as though every mongoose is occupied with cleaning off their own fur, and don't seem to have much energy for sorting anybody else out. I can just imagine, I mean, it's one thing having mud between your toes. Oh, somebody's digging at the back there, what you after? Very sensitive sense of smell. But yes, one thing having mud between your toes. Imagine having it caked in your fur, all over your body. I apologize, I missed the name of whoever fed through that comment, but I did have a good chuckle at it. You are absolutely right. They are indeed cute until they bite your nose. And I think every time I see a banded mongoose, I tell the story, so I might as well not break with tradition. It was Gina. Gina, yes, you are absolutely right. Better not break with tradition, even though I fear most of you are familiar with this tale. I once became willing or not, the adopted mother of a small banded mongoose, and she was very cute. Her name was Goose. She was very sweet. She used to make the cutest noises. She also once bit me on the septum. So she basically dangled from her teeth the middle part of my nose, just above my lip. It was excruciating. You know what it's like when something happens to your nose, when your eyes start to run. If you've got a sore nose, your eyes start to pour whether you want to or not. It was absolutely excruciating, second only to the pain experienced by my friend Steph, because Goose bit her on the eyelid. Goose bit us a lot of times. She also used to steal our socks off our feet. And then what we do is we dangle the sock next to her and then spin it round and round. Now, when telling that story, I'm always cautious of raising a point, especially if our regular viewers are familiar with this, but for our new viewers or those familiar or unfamiliar with the natural world, wild animals are not meant to be pets. They should not be kept as pets. Only professionals who have a very good reason for caring for a wild animal should do so. A wild animal kept as a pet by somebody not in that field is a status symbol. And as much as I'm sure people who have those sorts of wild animals as their pets love them to bits, that's not fair on them. It's absolutely not fair. And that applies to savanna cats. Recently, the BBC did a documentary on some of the smaller cats of the wild cats, not domestic cats, wild cats. And they basically did an entire documentary on these little cats, and the first thing that happened that Google picked up was a search for people searching for where to buy these cats, these wild animals. It's devastating. That applies to savanna cats as well. That stock, okay, there are existing savanna cats, that damage is done. Savanna cat is a mixture between a serval and a domestic cat. The damage is done, but to create a new breeding stock, those servals are coming from somewhere. All right. Oh, hyena. No rovers here, hyena. You'll have to make the long trek back to South Africa if you want to meet Ronald. I think the word's out already. Looking across at everybody, there's a place here called Hippo Pools where people can stop, and there is a toilet of sorts. There's watching those. All right, as our hyena is going to wander off shortly and I'm going to bumble along, let's go and rejoin Steve on foot to see whether he's found anything exciting to show you.
We have had some exciting things, folks, but obviously not as exciting as what the others have had. Otherwise, they would have come to us sooner. But I believe you have had an absolutely... Seb is caught in what we call a black monkey thorn. And it is a tree that once you catch it is very difficult to... There we go. The reason why I carry a stick as well, to free ourselves as well as the cameraman when he gets hooked. So folks, we had some interesting steenbok activity with a little scraping in the ground, but we'll find you one of them another time. Something I did find, and it's for you to remember now, here we have the little baby leaf of the marula. You can see the little stalks and the leaf. It's got that almost whitish sort of color to it, if I wipe it there. Not so clear now as they get older, but what you can do, as I said, medicinally, and I'm going to do it now because you all know, you all love to watch me eat things. It's not great. It's bitter, but if you can hold it in your mouth and chew it, and then you swallow that liquid, it'll cure any sort of heartburn that you have. But it's not great, I promise. There are better ways. I've got some lovely Gaviscon back at home. Okay, so we're continuing on. Our stomachs are starting to rumble like I believe something else you have been watching. We are slowly making our way back to camp, and Seb is once again caught in the black monkey thorn. And while we continue on our way, we're going to go back to Noel with the elephant.
It's Elephant Palooza over here just north of Chitwa Dam. We decided to head on, and what did we find? At least 30 more elephants, and within this herd is a huge bull. You can see him here, there on the right-hand side. He is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful male. The herd is relaxed with him. He's relaxed. He must not be in muss. I also can't smell him from here. And there you can see his tush, just one. So tusk. His other one's been broken off, but that is a decent size tusk right there. That's going to probably be as long as an adult man's arm and quite thick. I would probably say 2 softballs worth thickness. And they're standing underneath a marula tree, just like what Steve was talking about there. And I don't see them eating off of any fruits. I do see them eating around the tree a little bit, picking up. Oh, they are eating fruits. There we go. I was seeing some of the youngsters eating the trees around the marula tree, but some of them are picking up some fruits every now and then. I actually haven't seen as many marula fruits this season as I would like to. I think our lack of rain has really affected the fruiting season this year, unfortunately, which of course will have an effect on bird life and small mammal life. The elephants will be okay without the marula fruits, even though they do enjoy them. So let's hope that next season is a bit better. So I'm really enthralled with this bull. He's beautiful. Look how much bigger he is. So the females that are around him, the taller ones, are all adults. Now he's about twice as large as those adult females. Joe, thanks for the giggle this morning. Joe, you're saying, holy moly, that's one big bull. It's true. He's a big, big boy. And it's nice when you can get them next to other adult-sized elephants just so you can see the true difference in a full-grown bull. Now think of the bull we saw with the female earlier, the younger bull, the one that was wrestling with her. He's not anywhere near his full height. When he gets bigger, he'll be big like this guy here. If I were to stand next to this bull, I would probably only come up to, I wouldn't even get anywhere near his ear, and I'm 5'9", so about 173 centimeters, I think that is. He would dwarf me. He could probably pick me up with his trunk. There, he's coming out a little bit more. Alright, as we get our last little views of this very large elephant, I think let's head back to Steve on Bushwalk. He's got something interesting he would like to share with all of you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have found ourselves another Steenbok toilet. Now, how do I know it's a Steenbok? It is a very inconspicuous animal, very small, sits at about, what did I say, 20 inches. Not very big. And here you can see the scrape marks. Excuse my shadow. The scrape marks here. And these are the little pellets. The little Steenbok pellets. This is very characteristic of their behavior. They clear a little patch like this with their hooves, and then they'll defecate and urinate, and then they cover them with the sand. So you can see all the pellets here being covered with the sand. And if I grab one of those, and I break it open, you can actually see what a selective herbivore is, and is a ruminant. You can see how clearly digested and chewed up that food is, and so this is marvelous to see. And I was told a story by someone, a good friend of mine, Alan McSmith, who says if the shape of this is, and this isn't a triangle, the shape here is a triangle shape, that I think it is a female, and the other two we found this morning are square, which is more wide like that, is of a male. Now, that is just an observation I've been told from someone who's got a lot of experience, but I haven't physically seen it myself. But the Steenbok stands about this high. They like habitats of this sort of semi-open woodland, and you can actually see, if Seb does a little pan around there, this is the eye visual that these Steenbok get to see. And they're very camouflaged, they're very small, and when they don't want to be seen, or a leopard comes along or a lion, they just crouch right down in the grass, and that is it. Lions, leopards walk straight past. So why exactly do they bury their dung like this? It's possibly to be a bit more secretive. We're not quite sure. They are territorial animals, so you'd think they'd want to advertise their presence. But here we have a little picture of the beautiful little Steenbok. And steen, directly translated from Afrikaans, basically means stone. So they kind of just very, very camouflaged in this little bush here. Probably the smallest antelope we find in the area, and very, very cool to see. Very hard to capture them on camera because they are very secretive, and they often run away by the time we get the link through. So the only time you see them is if we are rolling live and we come across one. But definitely one of the awesome ones to see. And you can actually look across at this plant here, and you can see where he's been feeding, nipping off the little nips of this buffalo thorn. You can see all the tips of these have been broken off. You see little cuts, typical behavior of the steenbok. Very selective. You've all seen me eating the buffalo thorn before. It's lovely stuff, really, really nutritious. And the steenbok is a mixed feeder, feeding on a wide variety of plants, forbs and grasses. And with his very small mouth parts, allows it to be very, very selective, to go in there and just feed on those little bits without any problem. Marvelous. It would be wonderful to see one, but I'm glad that we found another toilet. Thank you, Herbie. Okay, and we are going to continue. We are still on our way home, and on our way we're going to jump across back to James, who I believe is busy finishing up with Ronald.
Yes, we have finished up with Ronald. We've put him back on the car. I'm going to turn him off now. In fact, well, we can give you one last view of what he can see, and perhaps the best thing for Ronald to look at the moment would be David. There we are.
Hello.
There he is. Marvellous. Well done, David. That's me now, of course. You've seen me before. Many of you have seen David before. We're going to leave these hyenas. There are so many of them. But let's just do a little drive around of. There was one over here, so that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 somewhere. I think there are 10 hyenas here, and I cannot remember seeing 10 hyena here before. Gina, you say, how long would we have to wait if, for them to move away? Well, you can pick Ronald up from the ground without getting out of the car. So we could easily just sort of park between him and the lions, lean out of the car and pick him up. So, yeah, it's not very hard, unless he was very close to them, in which case we just have to leave him, I guess. In fact, I'd happily leave him with the lions, because they have showed no interest in biting him. But to leave him for the day with the hyenas, I think, would be very silly indeed, because I think they would bite him. Lions not doing anything further, so I think we'll just have a quick drive past these hyenas. What a magnificent morning it is that we've had with our leopard and her cub. I'll just park in the shade here, and look how relaxed these fellows are. They're not going to get much of that zebra, I really don't think. It's almost finished, and I don't think those lionesses and that baby are going to leave their carcass for love nor money. What is that on the road up ahead? I think it's just a termite mound. It looked suspiciously like a male lion, but I don't think it is. It's over there, David, straight over the top of my head. And it is in fact a termite mound. Fantastic. Excellent. Well, termite mounds have a right to be here as much as male lions, I suppose. Much as we don't take quite as many pictures of them. I don't know that... I actually forgive myself for mistaking that for a male lion. I haven't seen a male lion for so long that, I might mistake an impala for a male lion. Well, Fern, I think you make a very good point. You say you think a lot of people might like hyenas a bit more now that they've seen their lovely faces and spent more time with them. I'm hoping that's the case, because certainly, they do get a very bad rap from biological travesties like the Lion King. And, nobody ever comes to Africa and says, what I'd really like to see is a hyena. And they really should, because they're A, fascinating, and B, they're quite sweet. And I think they're a lot kinder and nicer from a human perspective than lions are. Anyway, that's my take on things. So, Fern, I agree with you. I hope that our intimate views of the hyenas will give us that kind of, or give the hyenas a better rap than they've had in the press thus far. See? Sitting up Fern to acknowledge you and say thank you very much for your kind words. Wind's starting to blow now, hoping it's going to bring in a bit of rain, but I'm not convinced that is going to be the case. Now we're into the last 40 seconds of the show. It always interests me how long the last minute takes. It's a little bit like being in front of the class during your 1 minute impromptu speech, which used to feel like a decade. All right, everyone, that is going to be the end of the show. Thank you very much for joining us. A big thank you to David for all of his efforts, to Noel and Steve and Herbert and the camera people, Jamie Patterson, mostly, of course, to all of you for your questions and comments. We will see you at 1600 hours Central African time later. Until then, goodbye.